life is its own meaning. It's true you have to construct the life. You have to become a full human being, and you have to live, and you have to choose to do that. You have to embrace that, and you have to see that as a mission. We give our life meaning, not life has some meaning assigned to it, and we have to find some outside cause or crusade.
Live for something bigger than yourself. This is actually a very popular trope in the world of self-development. It is linked to the idea that life has meaning only when it is related to a purpose and to a mission that has to be difficult, an endeavor that has to be daring. And because, the story goes, we live in unheroic times where most people are lacking such a mission, this is why many are experiencing a spiritual emptiness. And quite often, these trends are captured in popular memes. And this specific meme, which can be found in 100 different variations, explains and captures exactly this sentiment. Study finds 100% of men would immediately leave their desk job if asked to embark upon a crusade. And this lack of mission is prevalent particularly today in the counterculture. We see, for example, the very influential film and book Fight Club capturing this trend. In the often quoted words by Tyler Durden when he addresses his little army of men who are in search of meaning, quote, "We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives." So it looks like we need a battle of some sorts. We need to have something to aspire to, something big to aspire to. And is this indeed the case? Do we need battle and struggle to find meaning in life? Do we need, at the end of the day, to live for something bigger than ourselves? We'll discuss it today with Dr. Onkar Ghate in the podcast of the Ayn Rand Institute. And Onkar, we will be critical of the statement that we need to live for something bigger than ourselves. But let me tell you something. I have to admit that something in this idea that you need a mission in life, I find it quite appealing. And I will give a silly example. Last week we had our first big conference in Australia. And getting there included a long trip. It was something which was a new endeavor. It felt as if I'm planting the flag of objectivism in a new continent. And this made the event more meaningful for me. This made the event really special. The difficulty of getting there and the fact that it was a first. So does this actually mean that maybe we do need a crusade and a mission to experience our life as meaningful?
There's a lot to unpack here. And one of the main things is these are not all synonyms. So that you want something difficult is not the same as you want a life of suffering. That you want a mission or a purpose, or even to be on a crusade in some sense, is not the same as saying that mission or purpose is to serve something bigger than yourself. And if you think of the meme about the crusade, part of when it's literally like making a comparison to a crusade or to a great war, there's some higher authority that's telling you, you have to march on this crusade. This is for the glory of God. Or we have to liberate Europe if you're in the US and we're embarking on this great war. It's really not in our interest. We're not really involved in it, but you have to go save Europe. And there's an element in that kind of perspective, which I think is completely wrong. There's an element of yours not to reason why, yours but to, and in the Tennyson poem, to do or die. Like you're given orders that you're to fulfill, and that's what gives your life meaning and purpose. And I think it devoids your life of meaning and purpose to sort of blindly follow orders and to want some higher authority to tell you what to do, whether it's a father figure or in like many religions, think of God as a father or a mother figure telling you what to do, or if it's a more secularized variant, like go fight in a great war, and that's going to give your life meaning. I think it empties it of meaning because you're no longer in charge of your life. You're taking orders.
What about the idea of the struggle and the idea that modern life is devoid of such struggle? And again, the example, even in the film Fight Club, always is the office worker, the white-collar worker who follows a career, usually working for, the trope goes, for this company that couldn't care less about you. And this life, the comfortable life, the easy life, is, we are told, the life without meaning. Is there something to it?
There's something to it when you're talking about the way it's portrayed in the movies and so on. I think it's not just you're working for a big kind of amorphous corporation. It's also that the individuals are portrayed, and I'm not interested in this work. Like, I'm not interested in what our company does. Our company makes washing machines, but I'm not interested in washing machines. So yeah, you shouldn't work for something that you don't think this is something valuable to do. But if you have been interested in machines all your life, say, and you grow up and you like taking apart things, and you took apart washing machines and dryers and stuff, and then it's like you make a career out of this, whether it's just as a repairman or working as a salesman in such a company or working as an engineer and a designer to get better machines, more efficient machines and so on. That's difficult work to do that, and to do that well. And if you're genuinely interested in creating these values, and they certainly are value. I mean, if you can imagine life before all these modern appliances, it's a tremendous value created. And if you're really vested in that, that's not like I go to some job and I don't know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And difficult doesn't mean suffering. It doesn't mean like you have to go and it's suffering and it's painful. But if I mean, just repairing washing machines, it's not self-evident how to do that. To designing new machines, again, it's not self-evident how to do that. And the creativity involved in that is difficult. And so that you want challenges in life, and you want to sort of think you're climbing a ladder, that I'm getting better and better and better, and that it's difficult to do that. Like, think of a pro athlete doing this. I don't think one should think of like a Roger Federer or a Michael Jordan as like they're constantly in pain and suffering. But what they're doing is difficult. And part of the challenge and part of the joy is the difficulty and overcoming the difficulty. So that's not at all the same thing as my day-to-day is a life of suffering.
Right. And one of the voices in the culture, Onkar, who has popularized this idea that meaning comes through struggle. And I mean, there's like this triangle: struggle, meaning, struggle, purpose, meaning. And one of the popularizers of this idea is Jordan Peterson. And here's how he put it recently on Twitter. He says, "The purpose of life is finding the largest burden that you can bear and bearing it." And we also have a clip in which he elaborates, and we can now watch it.
You should be responsible because that's what a good citizen is. It's not, no. You should be responsible because you need to have a deep meaning in your life to offset the suffering so you don't get bitter. And the way you do that is to bear a heavy load, to get yourself in check for you now and for you in the future, and then to do the same for your family and your community, and that there's real nobility in that, and there's real meaning.
So his point, Onkar, is that, look, life is tough. Life is going to throw things your way. And the way to withstand, the way to cope with how hard life is to voluntarily take as much responsibility and as much of a burden as you can. You should carry a heavy load, as he puts it. And in some other videos, he explains that first you need to carry this burden for yourself. Once you're strong enough to carry it for yourself, then you need to carry it for your family. Then you need to carry it for, let's say, your community. And at some point, if you're strong enough, you should carry this burden for the whole world. And this is indeed a life of struggle because the load is heavy, but also for Jordan Peterson of purpose and of meaning, because you are elevated to the level almost of someone like Jesus Christ, because that's what he does. He takes all the burden of humanity on his shoulders. Now, the interesting thing with Peterson is he presents it as if this is something which is actually good for you. So he doesn't tell you sacrifice. He tells you this is what that will make your life more manageable. Do you think there's a point there that by taking this responsibility, not only for yourself, but responsibility for other people, you become stronger and therefore life becomes eventually easier? So the more burden you overtake, the easier your life becomes in a way. This is the Petersonian line. Do you find any merit in it?
Essentially, no. Sort of at the periphery are things like perseverance, resiliency, the ability to overcome suffering. Are these positive qualities? Yes, in a certain context. Are they the essence of life? Absolutely not. And just what you quoted, the purpose of life is finding the largest burden that you can bear and bearing it. Life doesn't have a purpose. So the purpose of life is it's this perspective that there's some outside force that is giving meaning and purpose, like giving you orders, a mission, commandments that you're going to fulfill. And you brought up like it's making you like Jesus. That's the portrait of Jesus. And it's important to get how incomprehensible the story of Jesus is. How does it, you're the Son of God, you're suffering for other people's sins, you're perfect, but in pain all the time. How is that a meaningful existence? I find I'm not raised a Christian, and the whole perspective bizarre. That you would worship someone suffering on a cross there's something really, really, really wrong with that. And to say that that there's not a purpose to life. Life is its own meaning. It's true you have to construct a life. You have to become a full human being, and you have to live, and you have to choose to do that. You have to embrace that, and you have to see that as a mission and a goal that you have to, and really, like, it's to create or construct a life that is a human life. That's what is not given to us. And that's what we have to do if we're going to embrace our own lives. And that we give our life meaning, not life has some meaning assigned to it. And we have to find some outside cause or crusade that we're going to serve. And you say it's not sacrifice. Well, it simultaneously is and isn't sacrifice. It's that sacrifice, and the portrait of Jesus is he sacrifices for everyone on the cross, dying, but it gives his life meaning. So it's as though like the sacrifice, but it gives your life meaning. So in the end, it's really good for you. But again, if you're not raised as a Christian, the idea that Jesus's life and death and a crucifixion is a like a painful death. The idea that's that gives some meaning or something. No, like who wants that? And you shouldn't want that. You shouldn't want that existence. You should want a life that is challenging and difficult because you're achieving real things. But that's not the same as suffering. I want to give a quote for how opposite Ayn Rand's view here is about that, like what you have to do is create a life. This is a description, a brief description of Francisco d'Anconia in Atlas Shrugged, and he's often the character people most respond to. He's not the character I most respond to in Atlas Shrugged, but he often is. And this is part of why I think, and here's part of the description when one first sort of meets him. His tall, slender figure had an air of distinction, too authentic to be modern, and he moved as if he had a cape floating behind him in the wind. People explained him by saying that he had the vitality of a healthy animal, but they knew dimly that that was not correct. He had the vitality of a healthy human being, a thing so rare that no one could identify it. Close quote. And the project in life is to become a healthy human being in the full meaning of that. And just like a healthy physical existence is just a part, a small part of what it means to be a healthy human being. And that's what you should be striving for. And in that sense, you're your own cause. You're your own mission. There's not something outside of you that's giving it meaning. You have to give your life meaning by becoming a healthy, vital human being who deserves to live and is living. And that's the goal. Life's its own goal.
That line with Francisco and the cape is one of these lines that you read once and you remember forever. But going back to the point of something bigger than yourself almost automatically implies you should be less concerned with yourself. And you said the purpose at the end of the day is you and your life. And yet the people who advocate the idea live for something bigger than yourself would say that the more you're concerned with yourself, the more miserable you're going to be. So let's see the next video that we have of Jordan Peterson when he makes exactly this point.
The more you think about yourself, the more miserable you are. There's no distinction between being self-conscious and being miserable. They're statistically identical. As soon as you become aware of yourself, you're anxious and hurt, right? So then you might think, well, the cure for that is to not think about yourself. No, the cure for that is to think about other people. You exist in relationship to other people.
And I think you hit on one of the other reasons why I wanted to be married and wanted to be married young and didn't want to waste time doing that is because I wanted something that was more important than my career. I wanted something that was more important than
Why is it more important than your career?
Because it is the foundation upon which all of that is built.
So, Onkar, let me try let me try to find some plausibility in this argument that says that when you are too concerned with yourself, you might become more nervous, but when you embark on something bigger, suddenly you feel better in a way with yourself. I remember in the first days, the dark days of the first lockdown, when COVID was new, there was all this scaremongering from the media. Everyone was scared. And I also experienced myself living in this gloomy atmosphere. And then I remember what was the moment where it changed. With some people, we created an initiative in York where it was something like anyone who needs from our friends or our colleagues, anyone who needs some shopping from the supermarket, we can help. I mean, we didn't have to shield in place. We didn't have people with vulnerable immune systems at home. So we could take action and we could help. And indeed, when we saw ourselves as capable doers, suddenly the atmosphere of fear and the atmosphere of passivity changed. Now, Peterson would probably say it's because you stopped only caring about yourself. But I have a different explanation here. What actually changed is that I experienced myself differently. I experienced myself as a capable being, as an efficacious being. I experienced myself as a doer, not as someone who just passively things happen to me, that there was all this scaremongering and suddenly me and some friends, we said, no, we're going to do something. It wasn't about, I don't care if I get COVID or not. It was, no, I have self-esteem. I trust myself. I can understand the situation and I will rise up to the occasion. So is there even any merit to this idea that, if you care too much about yourself, you become self-obsessed, then you become nervous, you get all sorts of anxieties. He says this is basically what anxiety is at the end of the day, and this leads to bad things.
No. And so much of, I find so much of Peterson is what in objectivism we call package deals, of putting things together as though they're all similar when the things need to be distinguished because they're very different one from the other. And so you're presenting the COVID, and I agree with part of your analysis about what you felt, and it was important to feel this, like an element of control again over your life, that you're not passive, just kind of buffeted by forces external to you. You're exerting control, agency, action, and so you feel, and rightly feel, yeah, like I'm able to live because I can take the actions, and I'm going to take the self-initiated actions that are necessary to live.
But also to help others who couldn't take these actions.
Yeah, so that's the other part, and that part of human life is having connection with other people you value, and like all kinds of human relationships, from work colleagues to friends, to just when you're at the grocery store and the sort of casual interaction with the cashier, to love relationships and family relationships. These are enormously important elements of a good human life, but they're not ones where you're living for the other people. Like, it's like my life doesn't count and somehow their life counts. So what my mission is to serve them and to minister to them and to help them, as though, yeah, they're significant and I'm not. And on this kind of view, it's rarely projected of, and what about those people? Like, if this is what you're supposed to be doing, aren't they supposed to be the moment you give them something? Like, you're helping these people, like, say, you're taking groceries to, shouldn't the moment what they do is, well, I can't keep these. That would be too focused on myself. I have to go give them to someone else. And it would be this endless chain. And Ayn Rand makes this point because she thinks of these issues as, you have to take them seriously, what they really mean, and take them to their full logical expression. And what that means, it's a life that's incredibly empty. And what human relationships should be are both people are benefiting. And when you're in the case of an emergency, as COVID, and you said in the early days, like it could feel like that, then yeah, that you're together as a human community fighting this emergency. There's real significance in that, but it's again a significance from the perspective of life, not there's some external thing that's giving meaning to life. And God told us, yeah, it's good to suffer, but to try to fight the suffering, and I'm sending you COVID so you can suffer. Like that's not what's going on.
Yeah, and actually, the moment I realized that what Ayn Rand talked about altruism, which was a very hard pill to swallow for me, raised a communist or in a Christian country, that altruism is a morality which is impossible to live by. It was this example of, try to imagine a life, a day in your life where from morning till night, you try to constantly sacrifice. It's impossible. And equally, this idea that you have to pick the most difficult burdens from morning till night, how would you live? What would you even do? And what would towards what type of purpose? So I think it's the other way around. First, you need to have a purpose. And if the purpose, you need to very clearly choose what that purpose is. And of course, that purpose, odds are, will require for you to take difficult actions. And then you take the actions. If the struggle comes before the purpose, then this makes no sense. So which struggle would I pick, and what would I pick it for? And one other thing, in this idea of that for living for others, your life gets more meaning. We have a very good example in fiction on that, and this is Ghate in The Fountainhead. She's a person who more and more and more loses herself because she believes the poison, which is the teaching of her uncle Ellsworth Toohey. And we see her at some point complaining that the more I try to live for other people, the more I try to get this meaning for struggling and suffering for others, the more my life becomes meaningless. So again, here, this is a morality, this is a way of life which would be impossible, an ideal which would be impossible to live by. And this would be my parting words, Onkar. I've lived a life for many years where there was no purpose, or to put it this way, there was no mission. And it was a life that sucked. So I totally agree with us. If your life is you wake up in the morning and you don't know why, what you're trying to achieve, this is the life indeed that sucks. And you feel somewhere inside you, your best part unconsciously tells you, you should be doing more. You should be doing something else. And once you find this something else, when you find a purpose, suddenly everything changes in life. First of all, you got more self-esteem. You appreciate yourself because you experience yourself as getting somewhere, as doing something which is efficacious, something which is adding up to something. And if this purpose burns you with the fervor of a mission, that's even better. Then you're even more living a life which you experience it as strongly, you experience it as meaningful. But here's the thing, it needs to be your purpose. It needs to be your mission. And it's not something above yourself. You're not living for something bigger than yourself. You're living for yourself at his best. You're living for yourself, a self who has a purpose, a self who has carefully chosen that purpose, so it's yours as it can be. And I think this is the meaningful life, the purposeful life.
And when you say it's a purpose you've chosen, it's a purpose you've chosen because what it is, or it involves the creation of values that further your own life. So, and this is what it's really perverse to tie together things that are difficult, demanding, effortful with suffering. It's a burden. Look around, find the biggest burden and take that on. That one is a pro-life attitude and one's an anti-life attitude. And the pro-life, what's distinct about human life is that we can grow. We can do things that are new, creative. We can learn more and therefore act in new ways. And life is about, and if you're taking your own life seriously and you want to advance it, it's about getting better. And this is why the perspective of a pro athlete who's constantly improving, that's what life should be like, and your own life. And if you think of it like that, it is challenging, it is demanding. You're moving from achievement to more difficult achievement, and you want to take on more difficult achievements because there'll be a greater value that you're creating. Like if you think of a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, of them venturing into the new, creating, that's what human life is. That's what we're capable of. That's what we should dedicate to grow in whatever capacity you can grow. But you shouldn't look at a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk and say, like when he's working on SpaceX and rocket, like that's suffering and he's looked for the biggest burden. No, it's difficult. And I'm sure there's long hours, there's frustration, there's dead ends. We try this, that doesn't work. We try this, that doesn't work. But that's all what achievement looks like. And it's not suffering. It's part of the joy of life. And then to think of it as a suffering or a burden or painful, it's a completely wrong perspective on what human life can and should be.
And since we are in the festive period, let me suggest once more for people to do themselves a favor and read for the first time or reread The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. They're the first time in my life that I saw the idea of your life and your work as a crusade, as a mission. And actually, Ayn Rand uses the term crusade quite often in her work. But it's a crusade, as you said. It's a goal that is carefully chosen to add meaning to your life, a life lived properly with your happiness as its goal. So if you want to see a crusader without an actual cape, but someone who engages in very difficult endeavors, always with a goal ahead and what it takes to reach that goal, do yourself in favor these days and reread Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. This was the podcast of the Ayn Rand Institute. Many thanks for your time.